Hello everybody, welcome to Mistakes Were Made. We are back at the dining room table and we are going to do our budget recap for the second pay period of July. So the end of July, everything has been paid that we're going to pay. Everything has been transferred for the most part. We do still need to take the priority money for sinking funds and the fund category out of the bank. I'll be doing that tomorrow. But everything else is done. It's set in stone. So let's see what the numbers show. As you can see, I have already added the information in here ahead of time. I decided to dispense with the whole suspenseful thing and keeping it covered. If people want to look ahead, be my guest. It's less of a pain in the butt for me. All right, so let's zoom in. Let's talk about these numbers. So as a general rule, we did not have a lot of changes here. Some minor ones, one big one, which does come in the income side, and we will talk about, but pretty much we stuck to what we had anticipated was going to happen when we did the budget with me. So Mr. M's paycheck stayed the same. This does look kind of ugly. That's because I used a different pen, and then I went over with another different pen to try and make it darker because I couldn't find this style pen. So if you're looking at it and it looks a little weird, that is absolutely my fault. It is what it is though. So just look to this side to see what the actual numbers are because everything here matches. The only change that we had did come in the side hustle side of things, and it turns out that I have received the second payout that this channel has earned since we became monetized. So we received a payment back in March, which covered November of 2024 through February of 2025. And then this particular paycheck or payment that came in July covered March through June. So very excited to see that. I don't lament the size or anything like that. This channel is not created to be an income creating entity or anything like that. It is very much more of a documentation kind of a channel. So I am absolutely not doing the kinds of things that you would typically need to do in order to generate income, and especially regular and reliable income. I would probably have to be presenting far more videos, probably shorter as well. I mean, that isn't necessarily a for sure thing. There are channels that do longer style videos and they do bring in some decent revenue. But it would really, I think, need to change the look and the feel of the channel. And really, I'm at this point kind of backing down from the number of videos that I'm doing, even though it's not a lot per month by any means. I would have to go the opposite direction, but that's really not what this channel is for. So that said, I'm still taking the opportunity to bring in income, however passive and in small increments that may be. And so that is the result here. So that did bump our end total income, which is now $39,630.04. Again, as far as costs are concerned, not a lot of change in our just regular monthly expenses for this particular pay period. Just to make sure that this is, even. So the only call outs that I have are the garbage cost, and that's just because we did our generic amount instead of what the actual would be. And so that has a little bit of rounding up. Similarly, so does the phone bill. That came down a little bit. It sets $87.76 instead of the $8,900 or $89. Oh my gosh, if my phone bill was $8,900, I don't even know what I'd do. So that ended up giving us, and total of $1,655.22, which subtracted from our income amount leaves $2,307.82. No changes as far as the standard costs here for the savings, but because we do have a slightly different starting point, we are at $2,082.82 left over. Again, very same scenario here when we're looking at our cash envelopes. We did not have any overages that needed to be noted because we did have coverage in what we had saved for any costs that might have come out of these. So still at $711. That leaves us at $1,371.82. And then of course we just noted that again over here. My spending, it stayed under the $30, so we're just noting $30 here. Brings us down to $1,341.82. And then lastly, we have the transfer for the yard cleanup or long-term goals. Technically, we're just doing the generic at this point because we're still figuring things out. And that, swing this down here, reduces the remaining leftover income or unallocated income down to $1,241.82. So there is a difference between what we were expecting and what we actually ended up with, but the change was for the positive, which is always a plus. So that does mean our priorities got a boost. We made a $372 principal payment for our mortgage, and then emergency fund, long-term goals, and sinking funds all received $248. And for the sinking funds, that means the individual items are getting $62. And then fund category is receiving $125, and we had 82 cents to add to our buffer rollover. So there we go. That is how we did with our expected budget. We stayed on where we needed to, and we enjoyed a little bit of a boost for income unexpectedly, and that definitely helped us out in the post-budget or post-pay period priority items. So glad to see that. All right. Since this is a full recap, we are also going to look a little bit more closely at those priority areas. And I guess for this one, we'll do some semblance of a sort of surprise reveal-y sort of thing. So we do have information up here about where we ended the first pay period. So for emergency fund, we ended the first pay period at $3,904.01, and we are now, as of the end of the second pay period or end of July, at $4,177.04, and that puts us at 70% of our interim goal, which is $6,000, and at 6% of the big overarching goal of $72,000. So progress is definitely being made there. Now, one thing that I do keep in mind is, as much as I am loving that this is, sneak peek, that this is building up and building up, we are aware that there could be something that comes in and drains this money, and then we'll be starting back over at trying to reach, our goals. That's what an emergency fund is for. I'm hoping that we won't need to utilize it, and we will continue to save and be able to hit that ultimate goal, but you just don't know what life is going to throw at you. Next, we have our long-term goal. We ended last pay period at $3,914, and we are ending the month at $4,262. Now that means we are $1,762 over the $2,500 amount for the yard cleanup. We are struggling to get folks in to give us a bid on what we want to get done. I'm assuming it's because this is summer. Lots of people are doing landscaping and yard work projects. We are also trying to be a little bit particular. We would much rather have somebody that's licensed and bonded, and all of that stuff. And it's not that we particularly have something against, general handymen and things like that. It's just in the past when we have attempted to work with folks who don't necessarily have a solid business behind them, don't necessarily have maybe what the same extent of past customers that you could potentially, ask how they felt about the work that was done. They don't have a license on bonding and all of that. There have been issues, very flaky, just the level of professionalism has not been great. And I do know that there are so many very, very hardworking people who are out there just trying to earn a living and that fill that niche, that are very professional and do a great job. Unfortunately, we are terrible apparently at choosing those folks, and we end up getting people who are a little less, a little lackluster. We'll just leave it at that. So we really want to get people that are a little bit more established and have kind of a client list and stuff, so that we could hopefully get a more realistic view on how other people have experienced the person's service and things like that. But even still, it's not that we aren't connecting with those kinds of folks. It's just unfortunately some of them are being kind of flaky too. And I don't know if that's just because of the time of year. And so they have plenty of work. Maybe they have stuff that's official and fully lined up. And to them, it's better to put the attention on those clients that are for sure and already have paid or whatever, they have in place. And the possibility of alienating a new client is less of a concern for them than maybe if they have conflicts or, they're just too booked of, upsetting somebody that has already, official and in place. I don't know if that's the situation. No idea, but it is taking us a little bit of time to get somebody in to give us a bid. And of course, we want to get more than one. So hopefully we will be able to do that soon. And to be fair, if it does take longer and we end up looking at more of a September or October timeframe for any of the work to get done, from what I understand from reading, and I think there was at least one or two people who made comments to this effect on a previous video, that time frame, September, October, maybe even November, is when the blackberries are trying to draw in nutrients to sustain them over the weekend, over the winter, so that they can, come back in the spring. So it might even be more ideal to have somebody that won't be available until a little bit later in the year, especially if there does have to be some kind of chemical application, because then presumably the blackberries would be more apt to draw that stuff in and have it really affect their lifespan and do what it's supposed to do. I would really prefer if we can avoid using chemicals as much as possible, simply because we do have some food-bearing plants in that general area, and we do have other plants that are just there that we intend to keep, and chemicals aren't great just in general either. We have used Crossbow in the past on the blackberry patch, and it did work very, very well, but it is very caustic, very toxic. And it, from what I understand, it stays in the soil a fair amount. So, I don't know what the plan will ultimately be, but hopefully we can get some folks in so that we can get some ideas on where we stand. As far as, costing, if I, of course, would love it if our initial thought of $2,500 is plenty. If not, obviously, we're still building stuff up and we can, work towards whatever the dollar amount needed is. But if it is $2,500 or less, then we are definitely on our way towards whatever our next goal is going to be. And right now we've got three different items that are in the running. First is the carport. That one is number one at this time. It did kind of flip-flop between carport and air conditioning just because we're in summer and some of these hot days have been a little miserable. But I think the carport still has kind of won out. If that does ultimately end up being the next goal that we are trying to pursue, we have done a guesstimate amount of $8,000 for it. Again, don't know how accurate that idea is. We could be way high, we could be way low, no idea. But that would be our at least interim or initial goal that we're going to try and meet. That doesn't mean, like with the yard situation, that we would wait until we've met that to have somebody come in. I think for this, I would rather we have somebody come sooner rather than later, but I would like it to be after we are sure we're able to get started on a project like that. I want to be actively saving specifically for that project. I don't want this yard situation to be hovering over us, because I don't want us to then be in a situation where, it turns out that $2,500 is not enough. And so now, we're having dueling costs and stuff that we have to worry about. So once that is put to rest and figured out, then we will move on to the next one. So carport for now is in the top space. Anyway, so that's what we are looking at for long-term goals. Next big one is the mortgage. So we ended the previous pay period at $227,737.70. And as of the last day of this month, we are at $225,000. Oh my goodness, I cannot speak. $225,882.67. Now, that is a pretty big reduction for a pay period time frame, and that is because a couple of things fell into place unexpectedly, or at least I didn't expect it. So we had our standard payment that came through, and then we had and that like had its impact that it normally would have. It would, some of it goes to escrow, some of it goes to interest, some of it goes to the principal. So, that had its impact. We also then had our extra payment that we did at the end of the pay period. But because August is a magic month for Mr. M's pay, it also happens to be a magic month for our mortgage payment, because those are on the same cycle. We pay our mortgage every 2 weeks, every other week. So we're paying, half, and then we pay the other half. Well, when we have a 3 payment month, what I didn't realize, and I don't know why I didn't realize this, is instead of that extra payment kind of skewing when the system considers a payment to be in full and then applies, everything to the balance, which right now, the first payment of the month, it holds it, and then the second payment comes in, and then it bundles those two, and so now we've got our payment in full, and then it applies it. I thought it would just be like, okay, well, you got your payment, you have a second payment, bundle that, and now then the next payment, it'll hold that, and the next payment comes in and bundle that, so it just, reorganizes itself that way. But apparently it doesn't do that. Instead, it knows that that is an extra payment, and the entirety of that payment ends up going to principal. I did not realize that that's what it did. So when we had the paycheck for Mr. M that came in on August 1st, we also had our payment due that came due August 1st, but it actually applied to the account on the 31st. So, the amount, once there's like a 24-hour delay before the money actually comes out of the account. So technically it applied during this pay period, and we aren't going to be counting it in the next pay period for its application. We will still count whatever extra we do at the end of that pay period. So there's still 2 more payments that are going to come out, so it's not like it's going to throw too much off. But I was just surprised that that's how the calculation actually worked. Surprised and excited about that, because then that does mean we've had a very significant impact on our mortgage. So, looking at the amortization from our original refinance to get our lower interest rate, on August 1st, we would be expected, if we had followed that plan and the payments as is, etc., to still have a mortgage balance of $243,868.99. So quite a bit of a difference there. And then when we look at that same chart to see, okay, well, where does this dollar amount actually fall? It ends up landing between May of 2028 and June of 2028. And as we can see here, we have just over $226,000 in May, and we're at $225,400 some dollars. So this lands, right in there, which is fantastic. We are almost at 3 years ahead of schedule, based on this calculation. So the other piece of information that we have, this is info that I can just get off our app, is over the course of this newest loan, the refinance, we have paid $16,960.96 in extra principal, and we have saved $21,162.50 of interest, which is amazing. And that means we have reduced our loan by 33 payments. So that kind of plays pretty close to this. It's not quite 36 months, and this isn't quite, 3 years from today. So that is the deets on the mortgage. And then let's see, let me take a sneak. Okay. So then the only other thing that I have that's like super number heavy is kind of where we are with our cash envelopes, since we're not doing the videos, at least for right now. So here are our totals for our categories: $143 for AAA, $148 for birthdays, $376 for car maintenance, $350 for Christmas, $52 for clothing, $21 for Costco. We have wiped out dining and entertainment, so we're gonna have to pull money from the fun category if we want to go and do anything. $60 for garden yard. Gas gets used up every pay period, so it is currently at $0. $35 for gifts, $35 for giving. Groceries, we still have $12 in there. So when I do my cash stuffing, off camera, that $12 will probably go into clothing, assuming that we don't go to the store and need it for something between now and then. Health is at $348, household is at $240, licenses still at $207, Pets is at 146, prime is at 84, and tax is at 280. And then last but not least, the fun category is at $421. Okay. So that's the update for that. Now, something that I did want to make sure that we were still doing, despite not covering this process with a video, is to keep our trackers up to date. So I'm gonna give two of these a little bit of color here, because we have the payment that we just made to said tracker, or not to said tracker, but to the long-term goals that we just talked about, the $248. But we also have the standard $100 transfer that is going to be coming up on the 8th. So we are going to document that in anticipation of it. So let me just add these numbers in, 248, and this will be 100. Okay, it's looking quite colorful. I'm getting a little bit full. I do believe I have a few more of these that I printed out, so we may have to have multiple. I suppose, or I could just come back in, maybe not so much on these ones on the bottom, but come back in on some of these and add another dollar amount. I think if we get full, that's what I will do first, is I will add numbers to the coins where there's room. And then if we end up doubling at that point, I don't know if there'll really be room for 3 and have it not be too messy. So then I might have to get a new sheet. Okay, so there is that. And then I did prep this already with the updated end total. Here is our mortgage payoff tracker. So we started this tracker when our balance was $231,678.95. We are currently at $225,882.67, which means the difference between this and our starting point is $5,796.28. And we were not able to fill in a square last time because we were just shy of a $500 mark, because each of these boxes is equal to $500 paid. So we are going to be filling in quite a few today. And I think this is the right one. It sure is. All right, so we are going to be able to fill in 4,000. It's really hard to see on top of that. So this next one, we're gonna go, oops, that wasn't what I was trying to grab. We're gonna go with a lighter color. So 4,000, we are able to do 4,500, we are able to do 5,000, and we are able to do 5,500. So some really nice progress there. Okay. So 4,500, 5,000, and 5,500. Fantastic. So it's slow going, but I am very encouraged, especially every time that we fill a line through. And hey, it could be much less, it could be slower. So I am not going to lament the time it is taking. I am just very, very pleased and excited that we are following this path, and we had made the decision to target the mortgage for payoff. That said, and here we're getting into more update mode, just kind of future planning and very near future at that. So recently we've been talking about the investing process, and I did talk about wanting to give some time to get stuff in place, to do some research, to kind of get a better grasp on what the change in job really means for us financially. That's kind of gone out the window. I don't know what it is, but I just have this incredible drive to start getting our retirement situation in hand and moving and going. I don't know if I can explain it because I'm not 100% sure why I am being triggered in this way. I don't know if it's just the constant uncertainty that we have been experiencing, first with my job, and then with me being unemployed, and then is this new job going to go full time? And now, I am full time. Am I going to meet and continue to meet the goals that are needed? So there's a lot of anxiety and concern there. And of course, once some of that is alleviated because I do get a job and then I do get hired on full time, now we are worrying about Mr. M's position. And again, being in that, we can't control anything about that. We just have to let life happen to us, which is not a position I at all enjoy being in. And so I don't know. I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit here because we're kind of crunchy there. I just don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's just the greater world around us, just how chaotic it has been, all of the different things going on politically, economically, just things that are going on at the local level, the federal, state and federal level, things that are going on in the world. I don't know if it's just ramped up to such an extreme level that it's, creating this need to try and control as much as we can what our future is going to look like. And, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I want to be prepared. I want to be prepared for what the future is going to hold. And I want to prepare and do everything we can to ensure that we will have a comfortable retirement. And I'm not talking about being millionaires and having, even crazier discretionary funds. I mean, I'm not going to turn that down if that happens. But it's more a case of I just don't want us to have to suffer the pain and uncertainty of, do I buy meds or do I buy food? And oh my gosh, property taxes are going up again and the utilities have gone up again. I don't know if I can afford to stay in my home. Those kinds of concerns that I am hearing from neighbors and, other people in the area. And you hear it on YouTube, you hear it on TikTok, you hear it on in these different places where seniors are really struggling, especially when their main source of income is Social Security. And that is not enough. It is not enough to sustain a person. And in particular, if you are in a higher cost of living area and you don't have the resources to move to somewhere that might be a little bit lower cost. And even if you did, you don't necessarily really want to, because maybe all of your support systems are where you currently are. And if you're older, you do need those support systems. I mean, I think everybody needs support systems, but you tend to need to start relying on those a little bit more, especially from a health standpoint. I think, as you get older. So I don't know. It's just, I really had intended for us, let's do a wait and see what the money looks like, da, 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 da. But now I'm just like, we got to get this going. We got to get started. I'm not a huge fan of AI, especially when you're talking artistic things where it's creating images, but it's basically basing them off of the vast array of examples that are out on the internet and da da da. And so they're not crediting where their influences are coming from and all of this. Do not like AI for that. However, I did use it to query about like investing. I had some stocks that I was kind of curious about as to whether they would be a good idea for the particular goal that we have. We want to have dividend income. And as I did respond in one of the comments, I don't think we're at a place right now where we are going to build enough into our investments that we could live off of dividend income. We need a much longer runway, I think. But however much runway we do have, we can at least have some money augmenting, Social Security and 401k or whatever other income streams we will have in retirement. But that is our ultimate goal, is we want to focus on things that will have an income aspect to it. And so, I threw some stocks out to get some kinds of assessments and comparisons and things like that. I even made the inquiry, here is what our ultimate goal is. This is the timeline that we have. What, based on the information you can pull from whatever sources you pull, would you recommend as options that would potentially meet our goal, help us meet our goals in the most efficient and effective way? And so it had, different suggestions, and we actually went through quite a few iterations of ideas, and came up with a plan, ran the number. Okay, what does this look like in 20 years? What could we expect in a down year if we had this in place? What could we expect if you have a mixture of good and bad, which is what reality is. And then we fine-tuned it a little bit, and so that became plan B, did the same thing, and then it was like, oh hey, there's also this that we're thinking about, so add that into the mix. And ultimately we came into a third plan, and I liked what I was seeing. I am also absolutely taking everything with a grain of salt, but I think what is more important for me is that, at least on the surface, it seems like it will do what I want it to do for my Roth IRA, and it gives me a starting point. It gives me a place to get going, and that's really what I need to do. I need to get going. It's just this visceral thing inside me saying, you've got to start. You've got to start. You're wasting time. So ultimately, there were some stocks, in other entities that were suggested, tweaked stuff, came to a decision. I have officially set up an auto transfer to go twice a month, so each pay period, into my Roth IRA. And then I've also set up an accompanying trade or purchase or investing automation that will take that same dollar amount and purchase set dollar amounts of each of those stocks. And we didn't set it up to be, if we have $50 to be $10 for each. We went with a percentage, and you just do the calculation. So we're going to 40% of $50 for this, and then what would that be? So so we do $40 of one and maybe $2.50 of all the others, and so that is automated now. So that, I guess, is my way of letting you guys know we have added investing to the budget. It is a budget line item, and it is not something that we are even going to wait for the second pay period of August for. That's what I had just recently thought would be a good timing or timeline to start with, because it is going to be a magic month. So presumably there'd be a little bit more money available. Nope. We are getting started this pay period. And my stuff is all set up. I've got a Roth IRA, and I just, as I said, I set this stuff up. Mr. M is not quite there yet. We did run this a second time. We just said, take all of our criteria and everything that we have indicated we are interested in and wants and needs, et cetera, but provide us with new stocks so that we're not doubling up. That would potentially give us the same result. It's just going to be different companies and stuff. Woo! Goodness gracious. So it did. It gave us some other ones, and I gave that to Mr. M. I was like, hey, take a look at these. See if there's anything that you would have concerns about using this as kind of our starting point to getting your Roth IRA up and running and getting us investing. Because there's nothing that says that we have to stick with what we are starting with, or that we couldn't add other entities in and things like that. So I think he said he did look at it and he didn't really have any feedback for me. So I'm assuming from that he's good with wanting to get things up and running. It's just I need him to get his Roth IRA in place, and then we can set up the automation. The only thing that's going to be a little bit sticky is the end of the pay period process, because we do plan on also adding it as a priority for any money left over. And ultimately, we did talk about it. We did think about it. As much as this is incredibly important to me, I think we are going to be okay with reducing the percentage that we put towards the mortgage payoff down even further than we initially were thinking about doing. We do have a low interest rate. So if it takes us just a little bit longer to pay it off early, it's not going to be the end of the world. And I think that little bit of extra money will probably serve us much more, considering the impacts that investing can have over the course of a long period of time. So what we're going to do is we are going to reduce how much we're putting towards the mortgage from 30% down to 20%. So it's going to be the same as long-term goals, emergency fund, and sinking funds. And we are still going to reduce how much money is going to the fund category by 5%. So it'll be 5% for the fund category. And then that will give us 15% each pay period to put towards investing. And so that's going to have to be a manual process, because that dollar amount is going to change every single pay period, most likely. And whatever money, amount it is, we will divide it in half, and that's what each of us will have available. And so then we will have to manually kind of do the calculation of, we're going to do 10% for this, this stock. Had to sneeze. 15% for this one, 30% for that one, 20% for this one, whatever the percentage that we have landed on for the stocks that we have selected, we'll just have to apply that to the manual amount and then add do that process ourselves, because there's not really a good way to automate that, since the numbers are going to be different each time. So I have my stuff in place. I am ready to pull the trigger on any manual aspect that we need to do. I don't know how long it's going to take for Mr. M to get his stuff set up first and foremost, and then to get the automation piece in there. I think what we will do for his share of investing money is, until that is up and running, we will probably transfer that into one of our accounts, make sure it's out of the checking account so it doesn't have any possibility of being used inadvertently for anything. I mean, we're doing pretty good with our budget, so I don't think that'll happen, but I feel better to have it just out of the mix, so I'm not needing to remember, oh yeah, we have $1,000 million that is supposed to go to Mr. M's investing. Yeah, I wish. So that's kind of the big change that we have that's going to be in the works and happening already. So we will see kind of the impacts of adding that to our budget when we do our budget with me for the second pay period of August. And then, of course, we will see the actual impact. Well, I mean, we'll see the impact either way, but we'll see the actual numbers that we are initially working with when we do the budget recap for the first pay period of August. We are not making any other line item changes at this point. We are going to still hold on to the idea of kind of waiting and seeing, especially with Mr. M's job being kind of up in the air. We want to get the investing piece in place just because we've got to get it started and use that time to our advantage. If Mr. M loses his job, then we will absolutely have to make some decisions on whether we back off of some of the priority stuff. But presumably, we will still be able to meet our standard budget, which will have investing as a line item. So we won't have to back off of investing completely. Fingers crossed, that we don't have to worry about that. But we are looking to the future, and it's with that kind of thought that more adjustments in the budget itself, it's not the best time to do that. We've kind of used up our option and our opportunity with the investing piece. So sorry, clothing, you're probably not going to get a boost. Maybe when we do our reassessment going into the new year, maybe things will have settled in by then and we can do it at that point, but not for right now. Okay, so that was quite a long update on what is going on and how we ended the July pay period and month. I need to find, this goes over here. So as always, if you have any questions, any concerns, any thoughts, suggestions, what are you doing, girl? You need to calm down. Anything at all, please note those down below. And I do hope that we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.